So welcome back to another episode. I'm in Press Start Games with the owner, Russell, and we have a very fun topic to talk about today. And I watched a Metal Jesus video and he was talking about what game store owners should never say to customers. And I thought, wow, me and you have had some fun conversations over the years about sometimes what customers should not say in a game store. And we just want to say we're just having a bit of fun today, talking about some things that also get brought up a lot in a video game store. And you've had this game store for how long now?
It's been 14 years.
14 years. So you've heard a few things.
A lot of things.
a lot of things. And we're going to go through them today. And I'll ask you guys, what are some things you hear in video game stores that you can't believe people are actually asking the owners? Let me know down below.
Hey.
So let's start off. What is something that you hear a lot? Somebody comes into the game store and they're like, oh my God, they're saying this again? And we're not insulting customers because some customers just come in and they don't realize that you hear this question maybe 10 billion times.
There are some questions we hear an awful lot. One of the big ones is with trades, like because we do a lot of trades in the store. People will come in, they'll have a bunch of stuff. They'll be like, here's my broken Xbox. Here's my stack of sports games. And one of the big things is we'll say, you know what, we're not interested. And then they'll sort of expect us to purchase it. So we don't have a choice, it seems, in their mind. So they're like, oh, but how about you just do $5? It's not a money thing. We just don't want it.
They're kind of in your face. They're like, hey, here's this item. It sucks. It's just like NHL 94, and you're going to take all my 50 copies of it.
Hey, I love NHL 94.
And they're like, hey, I have this stuff, and you feel bad because you're like, you want to make the customer happy.
I do, yeah, and it's hard to always have to say no. And the thing is, it's not just saying no once sometimes, it's saying no many times to the same package because no, we do not want it.
They're like,
it's not everybody, but some people.
They're like, no, are you sure you don't want NHL?
Yeah,
are you sure?
I'm sure.
So that's a fun one. What are some other things that happen?
So another one that happens is sometimes we get customers who come in, they're looking around, and they look like they're very interested in a bunch of items. They'll find one item, it'll be like a $10 to $5 item, and then they'll come up to the till after sometimes even half an hour to an hour in the store. They'll come up to the till, and they'll put it down and be like, so what can you do for me on this? And honestly, it's like a $10 to $5 item. Generally, we'll start cutting deals when you get more items or you have a bigger purchase that you're getting to. We'll look at a 10 to 20% off, sure. But this is a $5 to $10 item. It's a little weird to put 5% of that's $1 or $2. So we usually say no, but we get asked discounts on $5 to $10 items constantly. It's onesies or twosies. You're like,
I got a piece of gum. Can I get a discount?
Can I get a discount?
Piece of gum?
Yeah.
I always love the story when you first opened the store and somebody came in and that's all they bought was a piece of gum.
Yes, yeah. No, we used to have little pieces of taffy and we sold them for a quarter.
Right. And that was the only sale we made that day.
Yeah, that was a week or so into opening the store. It was a good one. So another issue that we have sometimes is people come in with say a Super Nintendo and they'll want a Sega Genesis, say. Those two items are pretty comparable in price and they'll want a 1-for-1 trade. I'm gonna trade you my Super Nintendo for the Genesis, but sometimes the Super Nintendo doesn't look as good or it's yellowing or whatever and our Genesis is super nice. And we'll sit there well, we're a store, we can't really just do 1-for-1 trades.
A trade for trade, yeah.
Yeah, we usually have to do a percentage of such. That's how we stay in business, of course. Everybody knows this. So the 1-for-1 trade thing happens often, or some people I want to trade NHL 12 for NHL 23. That's not quite the same kind of value.
And it's crazy.
It's a newer sports game. Right?
Yeah, it's wild that people will come in and do that. Say, I have this Switch game. Can I trade it for this PS5 game?
Yeah, it's that's a big one. You're a good point. It'll be the same title ported over to another system, and they'll want to straight trade the Switch version for the PS5 version, let's say. Things like that occur, and it's not something that we do. It's not how these stores work. We usually have to look at things that are comparable. Sure, there are straight trades out there that can happen just because of value, but specifically these type of straight trades are not something we do, but we get asked a lot.
Yeah, and it's interesting, like, this is a store, it has to make money or it won't be here.
Yeah.
You know, you want to make everybody happy and you'd love to say, you know what, I'd love to give you the Super Nintendo for the Genesis, but really, what do I get out of it? I need to get something out of it.
Yeah.
I like the goodwill by giving you the item,
Yeah.
but goodwill can only go so far.
What Nintendo?
Refunding. That's another thing that we have an issue with, but not just normal refunding. It's the unusual type of refunding. So somebody will come in, they'll buy a game, they'll take it home. We have a policy, if the game doesn't work, we'll replace it for the same title, we'll fix the one you have, consoles, games alike. But sometimes people just plain out not like a game. And that's something that we cannot predict. So if you buy a game and you come back in like 2 days later and be like, well, especially 2 days later, because that means you had enough time to play it. You come back and you're like, I don't like this game. Can I get a full refund? The answer is no. We don't do that. Gaming is subjective. It's not our place to say if you're gonna like something or not. Of course, it's always a chance when you buy a game. Sometimes they're only $10 games too, so it's like cheaper than a rental back in the day. So like you still got your 2 days with it. It sucks that you didn't like it. We'll still do a trade value on it, but we do not do full refunds because you do not like a game.
Yeah, as Russell mentioned, if it's scratched or there's a problem, the game does not play, they will do their best to fix it and definitely refund your money.
We'll refund it. Well, generally what we do is we replace for the same title.
Right.
So like, because we always have ample supply or we do it on our buck. You know, it's fine, it doesn't happen often, but when you don't like an item.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. It's interesting if you remember back in the day, probably the year like 2000, 2001, EB Games in Canada used to refund you. If you would take back a game, they would give you your money back.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, I remember like taking a few games back that I didn't personally like. It was really strange. It's kind of unusual to think back on. Majora's Mask, I know. Hold back your pitchforks. I didn't like.
Yeah, you don't like Majora's Mask.
Yeah, I bought a used copy and I started to play and I was like, I really don't like this. It was not really for me. And I took it back and they took it back. And I remember even getting the GameCube back then. I bought it and I lost my job at the time. I had to take back my GameCube. They took it back for full price and the launch games.
It's crazy. So a lot of people take advantage of that scenario, and that's why we can't do it as a smaller store. It impacts us greatly when people constantly do that. Bigger stores, sometimes bigger companies that make lots of bucks.
Yeah.
Of course, they can get away with that. I mean, Steam does it digitally. GameStop and stuff, they can do that. But you'll always hear stories of people taking advantage of it. And that's not a good thing. You don't want to like hurt a company because you can take advantage
and you're a great guy because you will say, hey, what kind of games do you like? And you'll try to figure out what kind of gamer they are and do a recommendation saying, hey, maybe this game is for you or maybe it isn't for you.
Occasionally in certain scenarios we'll do an exchange, but that's about as far as we go with that.
Okay, as a customer walking into this store, and I've heard people say this, you know, over the years of being here, and I understand it, but I also understand it from a video game collector and how much things are worth. A lot of people will say, why? Why is this game so expensive? Why is this $800 for a Dreamcast game? How is this possible?
Exactly, yeah. So I find it happening more and more, especially with newer generations getting into collecting and new gaming. They don't understand the environment. But this is one of those questions that we get a lot. Why is this so expensive? Why is Pokemon Platinum so expensive? You know, Pokemon's a big culprit of this, by the way. It's one of those things that we explain a lot, but it's exhausting because we get it a lot. I'm sure I'll still get this question. It's fine. It's just one of those ones that we hear often. So the reason that games are so expensive, as Johnny was pointing out, is because supply and demand. Pokemon is multi-generational. So with that said, everybody wants it. The demand's super high for it. I know there's lots of copies out there, but they're expensive because everybody wants it. So the demand has gone up. The market is just pricey on that. Same with some other games where they're late releases, so they'll be really expensive on older consoles, like things like Silent Hill Shattered Memories for PS2. That will be really expensive because it's a late release.
Just turning up shows your commitment to the process.
These are reasons why they're expensive. I'm sure a lot of collectors that watch this channel already know this stuff, but it's a question we get exhaustingly often.
Russell, why is Concord so expensive?
You're still mad at me?
That's
It was
going up.
recalled, that's why.
See, another reason. But you know what? For an average gamer to come in and say, I played a game a long time ago, and I want to get that game. Wait, why is it $700? It's such a valid question.
It is.
And it's just that it gets brought up so much that
It's just exhausting.
Russell has to turn on his autopilot mode and explain once again why all those things are that way. And hey, let me say, even I walk in and I'm like, why is, Power
You just did it the
Power
other
Spike.
day.
I know. Why is this game? Why is Persona 1? Like, how much is Persona 1 now?
Oh, I think it's like 500.
I admire your strong will.
It's kind of a normal thing that gets brought up, but yeah, it gets brought up so much.
So another one that we get a lot is somebody will come in the store. We have a nice looking store for the outside. We've got posters and stuff. People come in, they're like, oh, what's this store all about? And they'll look around a little bit and they'll kind of mosey on to the front and they'll be like, does any of this stuff in here actually sell?
So these people aren't really into video games. They're just like looky-loo people. They're walking down the street like, oh, some video game store. I'll just go in and spend 15 minutes looking around, even though I'm not into video games. And then they'll kind of talk down to you. Do you actually sell this stuff? Do grown people buy this stuff? Really?
Yeah, I mean, we've been in business 14 years. I'm hoping people are buying this stuff. But it is a question we get a lot because, we do get street traffic. It's something that we see. I mean, sometimes the people are a little more friendly after I answer it because I do kind of like snarkily respond like, I sure hope so. Things like that I'll sell, right? It's a question we get often enough that it kind of gets a little repetitive.
Well, it's interesting. I'm not trying to stereotype gamers, but I always know when somebody walks through the door and they're not into games. And they're just kind of like, oh, look at all of this stuff. This is neat. Whoa, do you sell any of this?
Well, we do have a lot of stuff. It doesn't look like I'm selling a lot, so I understand to a degree.
Yeah, they're like, is this stuff just sit around all day? Do you just like collecting a bunch of games and sitting in the store with it?
Well, I do.
So this is an interesting one. I come in here hunting for games all the time, and I'm looking, I'm like, oh, you don't have this game? Russell, do you have this game? And you look through your catalog, and you're like, yeah, I think there's one more copy out there. And I'll go, oh, okay, I found it, type of thing. But you get some unusual questions at the same time.
One of the main things is say somebody comes in and they're looking for like an older game, say for Super Nintendo, like Demon Crest, for example.
Which is an expensive game.
It's expensive. I think it's like 150, 180, I don't know, something around there. And then I'll be like, oh, no, you know what? I'm checking my system. I don't see it there. And then they ask me, well, can you order me a copy? I'm going to say this, no. I cannot order you a copy of Demons.
You would love to.
I would love to. Like a legitimate copy. I'm not talking about like a reproduction. I'm talking about a legitimate copy of Demons Crest. I won't be able to do that. This is a question we get a lot. I think, once again, it comes a lot from a new generation of speaking. People come in, they're not sure how I have all this stuff. Maybe I could just order them.
Yeah,
I don't know where their mind is.
That makes a lot of sense. Actually, that's actually a very good thing for a person to say in a game store.
It can.
But it's confusing for the owner.
It's confusing because we're like, no, I can't order that. I get that's a question I'm going to get, but it is a question we get a lot.
Yeah.
And it can be hard to explain because some people just don't fully understand that I just can't order copies of Earthbound every day.
What are you talking about? Do you know what's so funny? I was just about to say, Russell, can you order me 10 copies of Earthbound?
So another thing that can happen is people come in, they look around the store. Look, I'm not a great housekeeper. I get it. We got stuff everywhere, piles, stacks, whatever. So people look around, they'll walk around, they'll notice maybe there's not a lot of customers that day because they came on a Monday. They'll walk up to the front and they're like, what could help you sell some of this stuff? And I'll be like, yes. And they'll give me all these suggestions of how to run the store that I've been running for 14 years. I get that people mean it from the bottom of their heart. They just want to help. That's okay. We get lots of suggestions. We understand there's lots of ways to run a store. We got what we're doing right now. Hopefully we'll increase that as time comes. But that's our job. Our job is to plan out and how to sell the stuff to you. When it comes to suggestions, it's hard to take everybody's suggestions because some of it costs money. They don't know my finances. They don't know how we're running the store. It's a weird thing to give me those options because I can't always apply them to the store we're in.
It's so funny. Like I've actually seen it, and I think I've even done it. Hey, you guys should do this.
Oh yeah, you bite your tongue. I know you do.
And I'm like, hey, why don't you get a big display case right here? But I definitely understand. I mean, you have so much space. You only have so much finances to set up so much stuff. And I think you're doing quite well with the setup you have, displaying everything you have. But oh my gosh, I have seen some people, hey, I got a suggestion for you, Russell. As though you'd sit there and go, Oh my God, I've never thought about that
If I was
before.
just doing that 10 years ago.
Why haven't you come in earlier?
Yeah.
Oh, you could have changed my entire business.
And it's okay. I know that people care.
Yeah.
And I know that people just want us to stay in business, and I appreciate it. But we get lots of suggestions, and some of them aren't very good.
So another question I hear quite a lot in here is, where do you get all this stuff from? Wow, you got such a big store with so many games. Oh, where do you get this stuff? Did you get it from a warehouse as you were talking earlier? Can you order me a copy of this?
Yeah.
Where do you get this stuff from?
So this is a question that we do get quite often. I mean, it's through relationships, through people I know. It's not just something anybody we've been working hard at this. Remember, we had that story earlier where I only sold a 25-cent piece of taffy. That's because at that point in time, we didn't have the relationship building we do with the community that we do now and collectors that I know. That's where I get all this stuff from. People, places, everywhere. There's no ordering, there's nothing like that. It's one of those exhausting questions. We get it often. I don't know what to tell people.
Well, people come in.
We get
Yeah.
a lot of stuff. We're a
Yeah.
store. I spend most of my time looking for deals, talking to collectors, building those relationships. I'm looking for stuff to supply the store. There's no direct answer to this one. There's
Yeah.
many different ways to get a bunch of stuff.
There is trade-ins, there's people selling their collections, there's people who just want money.
Absolutely,
And there's so many things, and you guys have collected up so many games over the years. It's actually kind of amazing. And there's an entire back room that we won't
Yeah,
even
there's
show.
a back room we're not even showing.
So I want to thank Russell for letting me into his store and asking him a few questions today about some things that get brought up in a game store quite a bit, and I'm sure they're in your personal game stores that you go to as well. And the one thing that I've noticed with Russell and his partner John is that they are so kind and so forthcoming to every customer. I've had games, I'm like, hey Russell, this doesn't work. Hey, I'll sort it out for you. And it always gets solved. I've seen nothing but happy customers leaving this store for years. I've seen you bend over backwards. And we're bringing up a few negative things today, but there are things that get brought up quite a lot. But it's not about the majority of great people that come in to Press Start Games.
Yeah, we're always thankful for everybody that comes down. We're thankful for every customer that comes in, purchasing from us, dealing with us, talking to us, having those great conversations about gaming, why they got into it, all that stuff. We love it. So that's why we run the store. And I mean, sure, keep coming in, asking us those questions. I was just letting you know some that we get a lot.
And that is the question, why is Cannon Spike $400? I ask that all the time, every time I come in here.
Yeah,
I always do.
Always asks me, every time.
Maybe you guys can answer that question for me down below. So anyways, guys, until next time.